When my youngest daughter was 14 years old, she discovered online shopping. And of course, she just had a new mobile phone, she had her own bank account, and it was relatively easy to go to the shop, her favorite shop on the high street, to buy that dress that she always wanted and have it delivered at home. And so far, so good. She can pay with her bank account and actually have it shipped to home, and if she doesn't like it, she returns it. No harm done. But after a while, she started noting that she would be able to buy things in her favorite store without actually having to pay for it, at least not immediately. And that made it very tricky. And I think you can all relate to that. You all may have similar examples as well. I hear some laughing already. And indeed, it was the case that she bought a dress and she didn't like it, and she asked a friend to return it to this particular store, and this particular store actually allowed it to be accepted in a return in the physical store. So her friend returned that dress, her friend got the money back, but the dress had not been paid for. So what do you think what happens next? My daughter gets lots of emails reminding you still need to pay for this, but you already returned it. No, but you didn't get lots of confusion around her. And then when you ignore these emails that have to be paid, that means, of course, you start getting letters in print. And only when the letters in print started coming into our household, we realized that she had bought something that she had not paid for. Time for a good meeting at the Frenken family kitchen table. So what happened here? What happened? How can this be possible? Why can you buy this? And we looked into the emails, and of course, you'll recognize the fact that there were dozens, if not hundreds, of emails from stores trying to spam her into buying things. And these reminders of her to pay for this dress were just dwarfed, they were just drowned out in those emails. So, okay, that can be understood. But we took it a step further, and I said, well, why is this possible? Why can you, as a 14-year-old, actually buy things online without having to pay for it? What kind of system is that? And she wouldn't be able to answer it. Do you have an app for that particular store? And yes, of course, she had an app on her mobile phone. And we looked into that app, and it said, credit, 400 euros. My 14-year-old daughter was given a 400 euro credit by this retailer. She wasn't even 18, and she was already facing the risk of financial problems because the store had given her a credit. And of course, when she signed up for the app, it was very straightforward. It was, do you accept the terms and conditions? Absolutely, and she accepted it. And of course, she said in accepting that she would be 18 years old, so the store cannot be blamed. But fact is, we have youngsters at a young age already getting these credits. And why 400 euros? Well, as a financial journalist and as a dad, I was intrigued and I looked into that. And that's also the power of big data. The retailer actually linked the data on our household with our postcode and our home to the number of people actually officially registered at our home address. So there's 4 people officially registered in the Frenken family home, so that's 4 times 100 euro credit, hence you get a 400 euro credit if you install this app, even if you're 14. So that made me think, I mean, that's the power of big data. This also is an example very clearly demonstrating what we are up against in this digital society. And that's where financial education comes in, financial literacy. When you think of it, this particular situation that we have at home is just one of thousands of situations that young people nowadays are facing because they don't know how to manage their money. One of my favorite international institutions is the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development in Paris. Their slogan is better policies, better lives. And I think every government in the world should listen to what these reports that are coming out of there, including our government in the Netherlands, because there's a lot of innovation that can be put into the educational system if you listen closely to what's happening over there. The OECD, once every 3 years, does a study called the Pisa study, an international survey of educational policies and educational impact. And how do you measure educational impact? That's when you start looking at surveying actually the kids that are being taught. And they did a Pisa survey on financial education, on financial literacy. And what it showed that among 50,000 kids in about 20 countries worldwide, 1 out of 4 is unable to make even basic financial decisions. That's a serious problem. This is the workforce of tomorrow. These are the millennials that will be working, that will be basically working for my pension in 10 or 15 years, for your pension as well. By 2025, 4 out of 5 people in the labor force will be from the millennial generation. And that's actually a very alarming thing if you realize that these people do not have the proper financial skills to survive in the digital age with all the challenges that you have around us. So what can you do about that? And there's more studies and this was actually a study already from 2015, where we've moved a few years onwards. And we all know that digital shopping is taking up, I mean, it's rising massively. The ease with which you can get rid of your money online is significantly, it's rising exponentially, also in the last few years. So there's a few things that can be considered here. And also more recent studies, especially in the United States, show that there's an increasing risk of financial problems if you're using digital applications. And one of the things that we've discovered is that a lot of people who consider them digitally savvy, I mean, I can imagine asking you, is there anybody here? Can you raise your hand, actually, if you use a financial services app or your bank app on your mobile phone? Yeah, that's quite a few people. And among the young people that I see over here, it's almost everybody. Do you consider yourself digitally savvy? Is that a question I can ask? Digitally savvy? Do you think you're smart working with digital technologies on your app? A few people here. Well, the latest research shows that if you consider yourself digitally savvy, you're at risk of financial problems. Because it's so easy to get rid of your money. I mean, we are a week away from Christmas. Lots of shopping goes on online, and hey, what's easier if you're at home in bed at 12 o'clock at midnight and you still need to do some shopping? You can do it. So a lot of people do it. And a lot of people pay for that also with their credit card. Credit card is a very expensive way of paying for these products. A lot of young people do not realize that. If you're under 18, you cannot get a credit card, but a lot of millennials, 18 to 25, they have credit card, they have debt. It's just one type of debt that they face. I haven't even talked about student debt, student loans. In the US, you know, a university course costs about 30,000 euros per year. In the Netherlands, student loan system has been introduced. Many students have debt of about 60 to 70,000 that they need to start repaying by the time they enter the labor force. So you're starting your life with a problem, with a challenge to overcome. And in the Netherlands, they say, well, that's 1 or 2% interest that you have to pay on this, but it's very, very small. You don't worry about it. And by the time you're 33 or 34, the debt, whatever you have, is wiped out. Don't worry about it. But what if interest rates start rising? What if that 1 or 2% on your student loan in the Netherlands becomes 4 or 5%? Then all of a sudden it becomes a very significant burden on your life. It'll keep you actually from buying the home that you want to buy by the time you're 30. It might be an obstacle for that. So financial literacy and financial education clearly is something that needs to be recognized as a foundational literacy. We don't teach it in schools. I was never taught any of this in school. I only figured it out because of my job as a financial journalist in the last 20 years. My kids are not being taught. They are still part of the same schooling system that we had 20, 30 years ago, and it's also not being taught. So we need ways to raise awareness on this. This is not just a problem that can be addressed with a single nice project here or there. We need broad awareness of this so that it becomes part of the part of the educational system that will make our children or new generation future-proof. They need to be able to have the right skills to enter the workforce, to have the right skills set to actually go into a future where they can prosper. There's a definition of something called foundational literacies. And of course, knowing how to read and write, that's one thing. Knowing how to work with numbers, that's another thing. But Knowing how to work with computers, that's also one thing. That's a foundational literacy that needs to be taught in schools. And yes, I think we can agree that that happens at least in the Netherlands schools. But it's really a foundation. It's not an optional thing. And financial literacy should also be recognized as a foundational literacy. I hope that will change in the coming years, that there will be, thanks to more awareness, that policymakers, that educators will recognize this as an important aspect. So how about you? That was a call from Mick a year ago, and it was also very much a call to me. How about me? Mick was talking about money and all the evil constructions that we have in the world, and my talk is also about money. And I hope I can inspire some ideas over here with you that we can also find solutions for doing that. We need to be able to train our young people and everybody else to be able to ask the right questions when they buy financial products. We need to be able to have them equipped with the right skill set, the right mindset to go in there and be critical of decisions that they make. We need to train young kids with the question, do I need this or do I want that? That's an important question. 6 and 7 years old, okay, what do you want to be? That's an interesting question that was raised over here. But another question, when you're buying something or when they want something, teach them the difference between wanting something and needing something. That's a very important one. If they understand that one, they will think twice about making unnecessary buys of whatever it is that they want to have. Then in Brussels, where I'm working now, we're also very active with some initiatives to raise awareness among policymakers in this space. And one of them is the European Money Week. It actually was inspired by the Dutch Money Week. And we took the example from the Dutch Money Week. We put that on the turning table in Brussels. We had a lot of countries sit around the table, and some countries actually, hey, that's a nice Dutch example. Let's see if we can do that as well. The strength about the Money Week is that it's based on an alliance, a national cooperative alliance involving ministries for education, involving central bank, finance ministries, the banking sector, insurance sectors, basically all stakeholders who benefit from having a better educated audience of young people. And that worked very well in the Netherlands. There's the platform Wijzer in Geldzaken, the MoneyWise platform, which some of you may know. And we put that example on the table in Brussels. And what happened, some other countries started doing that as well. In France, they're now doing it. They are doing the Bankers in the Classroom project. J'invite un banquier dans ma classe. That's one example. Hungary has been very effective. They saw the Dutch example of the Money Week, the cooperation between the central bank, the finance ministry, the financial services sector, and they are now doing the same. It's the Money Week in Hungary is called PEN 7. It's a 7-day money days. Other countries are doing this as well, so it's a best practice that was introduced. And then last year we also had the bright idea of launching a quiz, the European Money Quiz. And the quiz was actually, well, it can be quite expensive if you need to invest in an app to organize a quiz with 30 countries, 22 languages. And yeah, how do you do that? Well, we found a way of doing it. And it involved an online stream of online questions with a platform called Kahoot. I'd encourage you to take a look at it. And I see some kids smile already here. Some teachers actually use Kahoot already for their trainings. Well, we set up the European Money Quiz for Kahoot. And what happened is that, well, it's a lot of effort to organize this. So let's say if we get 5 countries to commit to this, we'll do it. Within a few months, we had 32 countries signing up for it. And in the end, we had finalists from 25 countries. They played the national finals, come to Brussels to play the European Money Quiz finals last year. More than 40,000 kids actually took part in the whole project. Close to 200,000 questions were played on Kahoot online. And it actually was a very nice project. But what was the objective? I mean, did it really change the way that these kids are engaged? Did it increase their knowledge about finances? Not sure, but it does put the topic on the table in the classrooms. It does put it into the minds of the teachers to talk about this. So in that sense, it's a step forward, but a small one. And of course, we don't have 40,000 kids in Europe. We have tens of millions of kids in Europe who need this type of training. So a small project like this, even though it's very nice, it's not going to make a big difference. We really need the policy at national level to be changed and to recognize that financial literacy, financial education is an important skill, especially in this digital age. We shouldn't wait too much longer with that. The digital challenges are enormous. And even young kids already playing, for instance, the FIFA football game online, they're already spending, I want more players, better players for my team. And it's daddy's credit card in the game that is linked to buying that particular player. So it's a very tough environment financially where you can get rid of your money very, very easily. Now there was one final thing, one final idea that I want to leave you with, and that's the power of museums. Did you know there is such a thing as interactive finance museums, interactive economics museums? When you think of a money museum, you probably think of this outdated museum close to a central bank where you can see the first guilder or the first Deutschmark, where you have a lot of dusty exhibits where all these old banknotes are portrayed. Well, that may be the case in the traditional way of the museums are managed, but through our work in Brussels, we got very close to the International Federation of Finance Museums, and there's some really exciting stuff going on. Look at, for instance, in Mexico City, the Museum for Interactive Economics, the Mini Museum. It's a global world leader for teaching kids about finance. There's similar museums in Europe, one in Torino, the Savings Museum, which is actually based in a former bank branch office. And one idea, actually, when you hear that all these bank branches are being closed, why not turn them into little financial education centers? That could be one option. And then, of course, there's also the Flip Museum in Vienna, a really modern digital museum. So there's a few new ways of museum on finance coming up, and that's actually very inspiring, I think, because these museums, they become hubs for financial education. They are not just there to show whatever it is to be shown. No, they are teaching centers for young kids, for teenagers, for people who have to think about their retirement. And nowadays, you can actually make some very attractive exhibits that way. And one of the thoughts that I have at the moment is actually to put up such a museum here in the Netherlands. And you can imagine what city would be the most suitable one for that. We have a city that is very closely linked to the currency that we use in Europe. And I joked about it a few years ago at a party in Maastricht. And there were a few project developers over there present. And they said, well, that's actually not a bad idea. That should be more than a joke. So maybe next year or in a few years, I'll be back here on the red dot at TEDxRoermond to tell you about the museum. But for now, I just want you to think about this idea of paying more attention in our educational system to financial literacy. Because ultimately, this is about the quality of life, the quality of your life, the quality of your retirement. The quality of your life is weak if you have a lot of debt to pay. That's something that can be prevented, actually, if you're very conscious on the way that you spend your money. It's not criticism, but it's something that people need to be trained on. I was not trained on this when I was a kid, but now I know that this is something you really have to pay attention to. So ask yourself, would your life have been different if you had made different and better financial decisions earlier on? Thank you very much.